Every field has a story. Every season leaves a mark. And behind every great team stands a coach who shaped more than just the game. In this episode, we sit down with two respected high school baseball coaches, Matt Roberson and Gene Bowles, as they open up about the moments that defined their journeys, the challenges that tested their resolve, and the legacy they're still building beyond the scoreboard. This is a conversation about discipline, dedication, and the responsibility of shaping young lives, told through the voices of two men who were recently hired at Boyd-Buchanan School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards, and today's story is Matt Roberson's and Gene Bowles' Beyond the Dugout.
You are listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thank you for joining me for the podcast where our personal stories remind us how much we can learn from each other. On today's episode, I'm joined by two respected high school coaches, Matt Roberson and Gene Bowles, who were recently hired to coach baseball at Boyd-Buchanan School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We explored the journeys that shaped them, the lessons learned along the way, and the impact they've made far beyond the field. This conversation goes deeper than the game, into legacy, leadership, and the heart behind what it truly means to coach. Matt and Gene, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Melvin, for having us.
So I'm going to ask you guys a question and give both of you a chance to answer, with Matt answering first. So this is my first time meeting you, Matt, so nice to meet you. And I've known Gene for about 11 years because he coached my son in high school and during American Legion Baseball in Annapolis, Maryland. And you guys are, as I mentioned, in Chattanooga, Tennessee now. So I'm curious, what originally drew you to coaching high school baseball, and what still motivates you today?
So thanks for having us on. So that question goes all the way back to 7th grade, kind of being a athlete. Obviously, my dream was to be a professional ball player, but I looked up to my middle school basketball coach, Josh Cowart, and I kind of wanted to be like him. So at that time, every kid wants to be a PE teacher and a high school baseball coach. So that was kind of the plan all the way till I got to college baseball. Quickly fell in love with college baseball, the pace of it, the competitiveness of it. Throughout college baseball, I quickly realized I better enjoy college baseball because I was never going to fulfill that dream of being a professional ball player. And then just happened to get around the game of softball, fell in love with softball, and coached at Tennessee Tech and at Belmont for brief stints. Had to go back and finish my degree because I had a little too much fun in college, and started doing private lessons at that time. And I really, at that point in time, never wanted to coach high school sports just because I had fallen in love with the college game. But what was supposed to be 1 year of private lessons went from 2 to 3 to all the way upwards of 6. Met my wife, who's from Boston, Massachusetts, and she fell in love with the city of Chattanooga. So I realized we were never going to leave Chattanooga. So tried like heck not to get into high school coaching. Tried selling insurance, tried selling advertisement for radio. Just wasn't for me. And, her being a middle school teacher, I said, well, why don't I try education? It'd be kind of cool to be on the same schedule as her. We'd have 3 months off. Actually tried to coach softball at Red Bank. They pushed me towards the baseball team. They had a tough run of it, and they had put a guy in charge that just one of the greatest people ever, Glenn Wagner. And he was 60 years old, never coached high school baseball, but a huge baseball fan and just an awesome person. And, it was from day one, I think he realized it was probably best for me to kind of lead the team, which I think was one of the most selfless things he could have ever done. And day one, the team showed up. They had wife beaters, backwards hats, shorts, Crocs on. And I was like, well, I'm not in college anymore. And so that's kind of when we took off. I'll get more into that as we go. But yeah, I guess to answer that question, I think I was always destined to coach high school sports all the way back from 7th grade to now. I've taken the good and the bad from every coach that I've ever been around, even from movies. I know that sounds crazy, but Remember the Titans is my favorite movie, and there's so many good lessons to be learned from that movie. The movie Miracle, obviously, it's a real life story, and other movies. Even the coaches that have coached other sports, like a Nick Saban, a Bill Belichick, a Phil Jackson, a Greg Popovich. I think a coach is a coach. It doesn't matter what sport. The question is can you motivate your player? Can you get the most out of that? Can you break them down and build them back up? So it's just something that is addicting to me to want to be a student of the game. And like I said, I've taken a lot of good from the people I've been around, but I honestly think that the bad is the more important, because I really try to coach the kids how I wanted to be coached. I try to put myself in their shoes. What did I feel like in high school? Because now that I'm 36 years old and, half a lifetime ago doing it, I still can remember what it was like to put on my first varsity jersey. I can still remember what it was like to be a freshman, nervous to talk to seniors. I can still remember what it was like playing my last season as a senior. So I really try to put myself in their shoes. Obviously, it's a different generation, but that's why I think it's super important to listen to this generation and to learn what drives them and motivates them.
Okay, and I've got a couple questions relating to that a little bit later. So same question for you, Gene. What originally drew you to coaching high school baseball?
Yeah, probably my Little League coach. So I was fortunate enough to have a guy between the ages of 9 years old through 12, Albie Norris. He's actually still alive. He's in his 80s now, so he was actually an older coach coaching us as a grandfather. And me and one of my close friends growing up, Derek McLeod, he mentored us, and just that whole program of St. Mary's American Legion, Little League, St. Mary's American Little League. And he coached a lot of the all-star teams and all that. But having the ability to see what a practice looks like, and be it at some high schools and even some colleges where the practices weren't as organized as our 9 through 12-year-old practice. I mean, we would practice 3 to 4 times a week. When I tell people that, they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, we had our own little field that was just ours. And we shared it with another team called the Yankees. We were the Indians, but they never really practiced. So it was pretty much ours. It was a old movie theater pit that if it rained, we'd still be able to play. But having the ability to call him, ask him questions about something I saw like on TV, like in a game, or, be able to fill out even coaching advice through when I decided to come back home after college and didn't know what I was going to do, picked up side jobs working at Food Line, doing drywall with my brother. I was like, well, I'm going to coach Little League baseball with you, because he was still coaching. And we coached a year, and then I moved up to Annapolis and started coaching at St. Mary's, a little Catholic school. I found Lee Schwartzenberg, who had been at Cardinal Gibbons, which is where Babe Ruth played at St. Mary's Industrial School for the boys. Before that school closed, he came down to Annapolis and coached with him for a couple of years before the Annapolis job came open. And I had the ability to go to Southern High School to coach with Frank Hood and to be their JV coach and varsity assistant, and go to Annapolis because I thought I can win a state title with just it is what it is. But if I would have went with Frank, I'd probably have 2 state title rings right now. And he lets me know about 3-4 times a year, because that Bulldogs team was really good in 2A. But learned a lot about myself in Annapolis. Did a lot of stuff where, looking back, I'm not very proud. We got one hit where we had a little flare in right field, and I show up to practice the next day, sitting in a chair in right field and wait for the whole team to come out and just doing goofy stuff, trying to be somebody I'm not. It's funny. You want to put a team on a platform that they're not used to, but trying to get as much out of them as possible. I think, obviously, your son, that was guys like him, guys like Aiden Fowler, Matt Woolahan that came through the program. There's a couple kids that were the Romaleys that hopefully I made some type of impact on those kids. And that's, you always think like you wish you kind of were who you are now and go back and, definitely made a lot of mistakes. And I still go back to some of the stuff that we did, and you're like, what are you doing? And after Annapolis, I went and started coaching junior college ball, and I went to Prince George's for 2 years. We went to the College World Series and left there and jumped in my little tiny car and went all the way out to Kansas and coached at Bethany College for a whopping 3 weeks. And we had a coaching change, and I was back in my car driving to New Hampshire and had no idea where Dartmouth College was. thought I was driving to Massachusetts and found out it was in New Hampshire. So culture shocking at that. Was a volunteer up there, and after that season, not making any money, and camps weren't really a thing up there. Neither were lessons. Most of those kids played hockey, which was pretty cool to go to college hockey games. But came back to Prince George's and try to find my way and figure things out. Was there for a year before I started programmed out at Cleveland in Shelby, North Carolina, and then came back home. It's had some family stuff had a couple people in the family pass away, and then had to help out my niece, and who still lives down in Southern Maryland, and trying to just figure stuff out. I met my now wife after coaching for a little while. I was at the junior college level, and I ended up moving down towards Georgia, and we stayed a whole summer just hanging out, and fast, got engaged, had a baby, all that. And then I started coaching at the college she was at for over a decade. I coached at Point University for a year, and things weren't working out. And I'm like, Matt, I started doing insurance. I did insurance from home, and she got an opportunity to come back up here to Chattanooga, where she's from, and coach at her alma mater. I found the first job I can get at a logistics company that Matt would take me to work sometimes, and I absolutely hated my life. Now I fast forward, end up coaching with him, and after he called me probably 13, 14 times, and obviously Red Bank wasn't the first choice to coach, and I thought I was done with coaching. So, having Coach Matt and be able to get back into it. But like I told you on here before, the meet him in Cape Cod before we started recruiting is definitely a unique experience. We can go down that road, but it's just wild how the different people you meet kind of change your life and all that. I'd have to say kind of the long-winded answer would be definitely my Little League coach. I still talk to him to this day. He coached basketball and baseball growing up, and at the high school level was just one of those guys who would give back to the community, was always fixing the field, and we never had to worry about a rain out. Like, we were the only team that would be playing. So that was cool. I think that's where like the practice plans and all that come from me with now at Boyd.
I want to keep this mostly positive, but let's learn. I want to hear a quick story from each of you about a mistake you made and what lesson you learned from it. So what would you consider an early mistake, and what was your greatest lesson from it? Let's start with you, Matt.
What was a mistake I learned or made that I learned from? I'd say I'd say a mistake I've made is just thinking that you're untouchable, thinking that you're bulletproof. I think that, it's great to build yourself up, but I think you can spend a lifetime, whether it be 10 years or a lifetime, doing a lot of good, and it can all be tore down in a moment's notice. So I always remember, I always treat it in the sense that, yeah, everything's going great right now, but one bad decision can erase that. So I try to learn from my past mistakes. And I think as a former athlete, and what I ask our guys is to never have regrets. I think as a player, now being on the other side of it, I would love to go back and eat better and work out and train harder. And unfortunately, you don't get that. So I think as a coach, just learning from the regret that I had as a player, I think that probably is to answer your question, is I don't get to go back and do it as a player, but I can do it as a coach. So those days that I don't want to go when I was at Red Bank work on the field, or those days that I don't want to go work with our guys, because obviously we have families and we have hobbies, but you work your tail off. And I told our guys this at our last practice. I had a friend reach out that wanted to be a game day coach, and I just replied and I said, we're doing the coaching now. And even though we're still a little over 3 months away from the season, 96 to be exact days. And when we get to the opening game, I'm going to make a lineup out. I'm going to coach third and make some strategic calls. But everything that we do from here to that opening game is really what I'm paid for. So just having no regrets is my goal. Obviously our goal is to win the state championship for Tennessee. Only one team gets to do that. But if at the end of the year I can look myself in the mirror and say, I gave everything I had, then it'll still hurt, but it'll be acceptable. And then, I always kind of do a self-reflection at the end of the season. How can I be better? How can our team be better? How can I be better for my coaching staff? How can I be better for the parents, for the kids, for my wife and kid? And then you go back to work. And like I said, you try to learn from your mistakes. We make them every day. So just to answer your question, just learning from my mistakes as a player. I don't take anything for granted. Go out there and work every day because it can be gone in a moment's notice.
And how about you, Gene?
Yeah, I totally agree with Matt. I think that's from coaching in college and, as a head coach at two different spots, thinking that, you have it all figured out is probably one of the worst recipes for disaster. And, the little bit of, I don't want to say celebrity, but being on like the local access TV and doing like a sports show here and there. And you think you have it all figured out, and then life just happens. You are under a microscope, even at the high school level, in a place like Chattanooga as well, because whatever we do is a reflection not on just us, but the program. I'll take it back from when one of my first head coaching jobs at Annapolis, and this situation. We played at the Bowie Bay Sox Stadium 2 years in a row, and in Maryland, you only get 16 conference games and 2 non-conference games. I might get these dates backwards. It's either Annapolis Area Christian St. Mary's or St. Mary's Annapolis Area Christian. We played both of those teams in the Annapolis Cup that we created, but we had a player that both years didn't play in it at all. Like, it's the AA affiliate stadium of the Baltimore Orioles, and after the second time not playing, he gave his jersey up, and that's what I think that's the one thing where you're like, dang, we weren't a very talented team, but at the same time, you're like, you don't play many games. You're trying to get guys in, and you're trying, at least make the game fun. Being, I don't want to say just a player's coach, but kind of being, understanding where your players are. Because I think if we would have done pre and post exit meetings each year, I would kind of known where that kid was. He's not a kid anymore. He's working and grown man now. I don't think if I would have changed anything, would that have still happened? Maybe. But you hate to see somebody get so mad that they don't want to play. And you saw it, obviously my temperament was a lot different back then when I coached to now. And we had all types of personalities. I think I would have been a better coach for those kids now than then, but you can't go back. And that's probably the one thing as a coach where, I struggle with that. I struggle with the fact that, and even your son has played with several players who are no longer with us. There's one at St. Mary's, and there's 2 at Annapolis who played for us that, and all 3 were OD situations. And you sit back and you go, should I have made a more of an effort of phone calls? And you get married and have kids, and that's where the life as a coach, you say, oh, I'm not worried. No, going to a kid's funeral who hasn't had a chance to really have life, like that sucked, and having situations to where you felt like you tried to do everything. One of the kids I took to school every day. So, that's the hard thing about the whole coaching thing. And you're trying to be better every day. And the players, when you're coaching at the time, they're getting mad because of playing time. They're getting mad because they struck out or made an error, or you might have said something the wrong way, but they don't realize how much we care about them. We're with them more in our own families. And Matt says it best, we're going to see you more than our own families. Even though we just met you, we're going to love you. And I don't think some of our kids realize that until it's too late sometimes. And that's just how it is. But that's one thing at Boyd-Buchanan. I really hope like our kids, and someone will see this because it'll be on social media, but hopefully they understand we are real when it comes to that. So it's not, Coach Matt will tell you he don't hide anything. He sure doesn't. And neither do I. Like, we're definitely upfront about that type of stuff.
And Gene, I know you just answered, but I want you to answer first on this next question because you already sort of touched on this topic. I'd like to hear a story of a player who changed you personally. Not just as a coach, but personally.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple. Obviously the easy pick would be Damon because how quiet he was. And you're never knowing if he's listening or if he's liking being out there. And then he goes on to college and, he's having a great career, he's married. And but
Damon is my son, by the way, for those.
Yeah, and I think, looking back and, I didn't have everything to do with getting this kid to Prince George's. Our head coach at the time, David Buddy Foster, did. But Dakota McFadden, who played for us for 1 year in 2017, getting that kid he was at JUCO in North Carolina. He hit under $140 for them, and nobody took a chance on the kid. His grades were terrible. He spent a year coaching their softball team. He was an assistant coach, just helping hitters where he could, and we got him on campus. He's about 3. Made a couple tweaks to him, but he had an All-American year for us, and obviously the grades were so low that he had to go to a D3 or somewhere else like an NAI. He ended up going to Keystone College and having a great run there. But now he's been on TV with Banana Ball. He played with Savannah Bananas, and now he's with the Firefighters. And I talked to Matt about it. Traditionalists don't like it, but at the end of the day, I'm never going to be able to play at Fenway or Campton Yards in front of all those people. He's played at Clemson, packed crowds, and he's getting to do what he loves. Having that kid who went through so much while he was with us, he had a lot of loss in his family, and he thought baseball was done. He just never stopped. We had scouts come see him, and if it was either one thing, like he can hit, but where's he going to play? He can throw up to 90, but it's just not enough. And watching him every now and then hit big tanks on TV, it's cool. But that would probably be the one out of the list of kids I've coached over the time. But it's just weird, man. I've been coaching since I was 18, so there's so many kids hit me back, and they have kids or they're starting families. I'll leave you with one more. Kenny Arminger, kid that played for me at St. Mary's and played Legion ball for us. I know I'm going to leave out so many kids because there's so many kids that reach out, because Matt laughs at me all the time because it's even the kids that played for me for one summer in the Cape, and I don't feel like I did anything with those kids besides just hang out with them in the bullpen or on the bench. But Kenny, seeing him just grow as a young man, and he's in the law enforcement now on the Eastern Shore, and he built himself a nice life, and he's got a beautiful wife, and doing everything he wants to do. So you got to be happy for those kids. That I just glad I got to spend a little bit of time with him.
Damon, by the way, loved playing for you. He was really, really disappointed when you weren't back for his senior year. He actually almost didn't want to play anymore. So he really enjoyed playing for you. So I want to make sure you know that. I've told you that before, but I want to tell you that here.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I do have a question about the Savannah Bananas much later in this interview, near the end. I just want to hear your thoughts on that. All right, Matt, what's a player or two who's changed you personally, or impacted you, not necessarily changed you?
Yeah, that's such a difficult question, because I think each player is their own kind of puzzle, and that's the cool thing about them. I really don't even remember the first one when I came to Chattanooga. I came to do 5 lessons. I was promised 5 lessons, and it turned up to over 45, but it was some 8-year-old. And here I come coaching from a Division I, and all of a sudden I'm having to explain it to an 8-year-old. And what that did is that made me learn to figure out a different way to say it. So whoever that kid was, definitely. But I'd say I'm going to give 2 answers, one from my private lesson days, and then one from my short stint as a head coach. So the private lesson days would be Bentley Steiner. She is in her senior year playing softball at Montevallo. She was a kid that came to me around the age of 12 or 13. She had bounced around from travel teams, just, people not giving her a chance. And when she came to me, she was not very good, but she had a great attitude, very bubbly. And I don't know, it's hard for me to look at a kid and just write them off after one time. She was very close to it, and she showed up with a walking boot on. She had sustained an injury during basketball, and it just happened to be on her front foot. Her mom was going to cancel it. And I told her mom, I was like, I actually think the boot might help her tonight. She's kind of been hard on her front side. Let's, maybe that'll work. And kid you not, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen, but it did. And she took off, and the rest was history. All of the travel teams that kind of did her wrong or, wrote her off, they all of a sudden wanted to be her bud. Even in high school, did she go to play for Oklahoma or Tennessee? No. But she has basically had 4 of the best years at Montevallo. Obviously we don't talk as much as we did because she's busy, I'm busy, but I think we keep up with each other from afar. So, just seeing the success. It's always something I've always said is it's, I call her B, but I'm like, hey, it's me and you, B. So, it's her senior year. I need to try to figure out the date of her senior day and see if I can't get down to Alabama. But that would be the one from the lesson side. But I'd say the one from the coaching side, like I said, it's a brief stint. I've had some great ones from Logan Denton to Jake Bruni, Sean Bruni, Braden Stoltz, some people that are still playing. But I think Gene knows my answer is going to be Jack Barkaloo. He just finished up playing last year. Jack was a kid that, he was born to play baseball. And when I took on Red Bank, he was a sophomore. And I can just remember when he first started hitting, because I had not really conversated with him. And I just remember thinking, whoa, I didn't realize I had that here. And then he opened his mouth. And I was like, all right, he's a punk. And, that first year we had some ups and downs. Jack made some mistakes. I'm sure I made some mistakes too. The second year, the year ended on a high. The kid hit 3 home runs and 3 consecutive at-bats at the end, one being a walk-off, something that I don't even think I've ever seen in a video game. The next year comes around, and he got a little bit better attitude-wise. Obviously, we built our relationship a little bit more. Senior year comes around, and he was the best version of himself that I'd seen to date. Gene... When Gene showed up, and I always used to tell people this, has Jack ended up being exactly where I want him to be? No. I mean, he's not the finished product. I mean, I'm not the finished product to myself either. But I think it's unfair and unrealistic to get kids. I always tell Gene, let's not try to build Rome in a day. Same thing with kids. It might take 10 years. It might take a lifetime. I'm working on myself every day. And so, when senior year came around, there were so many things that Jack did better than he did his sophomore year and his junior year. And so he was taking baby steps. And I always say, as long as you're taking a baby step forward, you're going somewhere. Everybody wants to take the big step. And we just got to keep the cart rolling somehow. Don't stop. And if you do stop, just don't go backwards. Always be a glass half full kind of person. And, Jack, there were times that I got frustrated with him last year. He made a great mistake at the end of the year, doing something he shouldn't have done, and we handled it. And at the end of the year, our success that we had was due in large part to him. He finally bought in. Not that he had not bought in before, but he really just, I kind of went to him and I said, son, this could be your last week of baseball. And I said, but if we keep winning, it could go on for a long time, and it did. It went on for a month. And at the end of the year, I remember, we're crying out. I'm crying because I'm an emotional guy, but after we lose a heartbreaker, we're emotional. I'm not emotional because we lost. Losing's part of sports. It's part of the game. I was emotional just because I knew for those last few minutes, that was going to be the last time that team was ever together. And I don't think they realized that. But I knew that our seniors were going to be gone. Little did I know that was going to be the last official game that me and Gene coached at Red Bank. But I knew I better soak it in. And so, we break it down, and Jack comes up behind me, and he gives me a hug, and he said, Coach Matt, he said, I want to thank you for the best month of baseball in my entire life. And I think I thanked him back or something like that. We still communicate today, and he's actually going into the Army this spring. He was one of the first people I called when I accepted the Boyd-Buchanan job. And because he had made some comments before that he thought I deserved to coach a better team than Red Bank. And I thought that was a stupid statement because, I think I said something along the lines of, Jack, you deserve me just as much as anyone else does. But that was the kids we had at Red Bank. And so yeah, Jack Barkaloo, while, he definitely frustrated me at times and, made me maybe take a headache pill or every now and then. He's going to be a kid that I'm always going to cherish and love. It doesn't matter if it's him or anyone. When you go to work with those kids every day, you create a bond, and that bond is going to last forever. So, like, for instance, the kids at Red Bank that we unfortunately had to break the news to a few weeks ago, right now they're probably hurting a little bit. I get it. I would be too. I am in so many ways as far as having to make that tough decision, but That's never going to take away from what we did. That's never going to take away that I'm going to be there for them. It's easy to say it. It's harder to do. So anytime I'm able to get that opportunity to put my money where my mouth is, I do it. So, but to answer the question, Bentley, that little 8-year-old that taught me how to reinvent myself and describe it, Bentley Steiner from the private sector of it, and then Jack Barkley from the team side of it.
How has the role of a high school coach changed with social media and the high-pressure sports culture?
I think social media has changed everything. I think that you are constantly under the spotlight. I think that you have more temptation. You have more distractions. I know that I've seen people like Michael Jordan and players that, played before me that would tell you that if social media was around when they played, they probably would have never made it because they would have been canceled. So I think that kids need to be aware that, kind of like I said earlier, you can be the best and be on top of the world, but one bad decision can change you. As far as the distractions of it, the iPhone tells you how much you're on your phone. And so I think there's a lot of good that can come from it. I know personally we use an Instagram group that I created to show videos to our guys. There's a lot of useful knowledge out there, a lot of really good coaches across the world, but it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It just depends on what you do. So you just want to make sure that you're not putting it, once you hit send, there is no getting it back. So I always tell, I think it was Stephen A. Smith that said that way back when, like, don't hit send or something like that. Just the distraction and the ability to cancel yourself really fast is something. So,
all right, Gene, what about you?
Yeah, and I'll be quick. I mean, you know this story, but when Josh Hader pitched in the All-Star game at Nationals Park, and he didn't have a great outing, and all the trolls online went through his social media and found stuff he said when he was at Old Mill High School. And was he a dumb teenager at the time? Yeah, he's talking to his friends, trying to be funny. That came back to haunt him. Even if you have a PR team, some people don't think about what you did as a 15, 16-year-old could come back to haunt you. But that's the negative too. Like, do I think he's that same person? No, I don't. But at the same time, public opinion, and when you get a platform, and Matt says it best, the people on the way up sometimes aren't the same people on the way down. So, you got to be smart what you post online, and you got to make sure it's beneficial in that.
So you guys are going to be coaching once the season starts. Actually, you've already started for fall ball at a private school, which is a little bit different from a public school where you can actually have a little bit of an influence on who who attends the school and who plays at the school. So if you could recruit all of your own players, what kind of player would you look for beyond the talent and the statistics?
Just a good human being, good character, good work ethic, someone that I can trust, someone that's loyal. We all play our final game at some point in time. But the biggest thing is we want to make sure that we've got good people in our program. We want to, and that's, we've already kind of started to line up some projects for our guys. I've said over the last few weeks, just because I'm coaching at a private school, that doesn't take away that, when I came home, I was taken to a double wide trailer. And there's nothing wrong with double wide trailers, but I don't know if anybody at the private school sector is doing that. So I think it's important to remember who I am. And I've been given a platform to make an impact, to introduce to these kids some things that they have never seen. And a lot of people will say that they're spoiled and entitled. And I would say they're privileged. I hate to use those words, but they are privileged. Their parents have worked hard. So we just want to make sure that they're able to see that, it's a big world out there. And after you get out of high school or college or whatever, you need to be able to get along with people and see people for who they are. I always tell the kids, be careful how you treat that person in your class, because in 20 years, you might be sitting across a desk from them needing a job from them. You just never know what's going to happen. So we're just looking for high character kids, kids that don't want to be given anything, kids that want to go earn what they.
So what about you, Gene?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. So at the college level, I look for players how they talk to their parents. Were they back talking to their parents? Did they hold the door for their parents? Did they hold the door for other people when we take them out to restaurants? I'm guilty. When I knew we were going to certain restaurants, I'd make sure that restaurant knew we were bringing a recruit in, and they would botch their meal pretty bad and see how they acted. Because if they were terrible to the wait staff, we don't want that kid. And that comes back finding good character kids, good people. But overall, we want people who are not just trying to make Boyd-Buchanan a better place, but the city of Chattanooga and eventually abroad. But we're not in this for photo op. I know there's some institutions around here that like to do stuff just for photo ops, but that's not us. We're in the business of transformation of lives and making sure our guys are going to be good people.
Piggybacking on that answer, Gene, I want you to answer this next question first. So what life lessons does baseball uniquely teach that players might not fully appreciate until later on? And that goes along with what you talked about with the recruiting experience at a restaurant.
Yeah, I think, baseball is the one sport where, we said it before, we have a young man right now, Boyd, who started his season last year going 0 for 17 with, missiles everywhere. Dustin Pedroia went 0 for 18 with missiles everywhere, and it's a sport of failure. You do everything right and still come up short. Having the ability to have to be able to block the noise out, to be able to keep working and knowing that you're doing the right thing, even though you're not seeing the results. And that's the same thing at home. That's the same thing in life. And be able to stay positive. One of the things like me and Coach Matt have is, not everybody's perfect. We'll come to the ball field and, we're human. I'll have a bad day. He potentially has a bad day, but we can't both have a bad day at the same time. And, we have to be on for these kids. They are going to feed off not just my energy. They're going to feed off Coach Matt's energy. He's the head guy. And that's one of the greatest things about this game. You have to have the ability to be able to turn it off and, turn it on. And I'll leave you with, Derek Jeter was one of the few breeds of guys who he never watched baseball when he left just because he needed to get away. Now, it's different for a high school kid, but pro guy playing 162-plus games with postseason, but, that was his out, be able to. And a guy like Alex Rodriguez thought he was nuts, but be able to be okay with failure and still doing what you're doing.
All right, Matt, what about you?
I think baseball teaches you how to deal with adversity. Life is all about ups and downs, just like baseball. Just like I spoke earlier, everything can be going great, and then all of a sudden it's not. So we use the platform of baseball to try to do that. You're not going to get everything that you want when you get into the real world. And I always tell people that I tell our players, if you're not happy with our role on our team, then do something about it. Work harder. It's nothing personal. If you want to be the starting catcher or the best hitter, then get out there and work. We did a thing the other day where I asked our kids one by one unexpectedly who's the best hitter on the team, and they all gave the one answer. And then I said who hits the most on our team, and they all gave the one answer. And I said, guys, it's not a hard formula. The people that work the hardest tend to be the best. And so if you want to make a lot of money in this world, then get out and do it. Some of us are blessed with different talents, but as long as, once again, you can look yourself in the mirror and say that I did it at the best of my ability, then that should be fine, and live with that. But if you're always just sitting around saying, oh, why me, or why can't this go for me, or whatever, don't be a Debbie Downer. So we just want to use I think that baseball can absolutely teach you how to handle life, the shortcomings, the success, the failures, and it's a lot like the game of baseball. The only thing is that the game of life is a lot more real. The beautiful thing about baseball is no matter what happens, they erase the scoreboard at the end and they reset it, and it's zeros the next day or the next opportunity. It's not always the case in life. Sometimes we wish we could reset the scoreboard, but that's just not how it works in the real world.
Yeah, that's a great lesson there. Baseball, we all talk about baseball being a game of failure. And if you're successful 3 out of 10 times, you go to the Hall of Fame, which means you failed 7 out of 10 times. And those 7 times, you may have actually hit the ball harder than you did those 3 times you got the hits. So you learn that life isn't fair. Things don't always go as you think they should, and you have to be resilient. You can't take it personally that a fielder makes a diving catch when you just hit the ball 110 miles an hour, because the next time you may get a blooper 55 miles an hour and drops in between the infielder and outfielder and drives in the winning run. Things tend to even out.
I don't know. I feel like I got my share of bloopers, but there's a lot of missiles I hit. That's what everybody always said. They say, "Oh, that's going to come back around," but no. I don't know. I just think everyone should. It just depends on are you a glass half empty or glass half full guy, and that's always kind of what I live my life by is, me and Gene, we say something all the time, and this is more Gene than me. People are like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And Gene, we love to say the word we get to. That's a big thing that we both do together, and we hope it overflows into our kids and our program. So, all
right. So when you got kids with different personalities and skill levels, how do you build trust and unity when you're building a team?
Treat everybody the same. That's the most simple question. This is going to be the easiest, shortest answer. Treat everybody the same. Typically, honestly, I go at my best player the hardest. I know Greg Popovich was very big on that. I know Bill Belichick was very big. Like I said, I do try to treat them the same, but I don't care if you're the worst player in our program. To me, you're still a human being, and you're still a piece to the puzzle. A program, it's all a puzzle. And obviously some of us are bigger pieces of the puzzle. Obviously being the head coach, I'm a very big piece of the puzzle. But if you look at a puzzle and there's just one little bitty piece, it could be this big and it's missing, it just doesn't look right. So for this thing to really, really work, you have to have every piece. So that means if it's a freshman or a senior that might play one inning or have one at bat, treat that person like they're the best player, like they've got the richest parents, because you've got to have everyone pulling the rope from the same direction to accomplish the goal of winning a championship, in my opinion.
Gene, what about you?
Yeah, this is going to be even shorter. It's the same answer because and you'll laugh, you'll think we've coached together forever. We've only been coaching together since the end of January, but there's nothing I can add to that. I mean, we have the same philosophy on that, so I agree with Matt.
Okay. Well, what about parents? Coaches talk about, and teachers too, for that matter, talk about parents in this era being much tougher to deal with than students and athletes. Do you find that to be the case?
Matt, I'll take this one first. So, and you can piggyback off me. I think it's the travel ball atmosphere where players are just able to hop around and go when they're not happy. A lot of these teams are 11 to maybe 13 players, so they've never had to earn playing time. When we played, and I'm aging myself, I mean, me and you've talked about this before, you actually had to earn on your Legion team or your Dixie Youth or whatever, where now any dad can just start a program. The other part is the education piece of it. Most parents are used to, be able to stroke a check or do whatever to get their kid playing time. And, when they find a coach who isn't like that or has some type of values, that's hard. And I think the access piece to parents as to coaches gets misinterpreted a little bit. Like, we've had a parents meeting and we've been pretty upfront, like how they need to meet with us and all that. But sometimes the lines get skewed where they don't know when the right time to ask or what have you. Even we just started and, we might have a parent that wants to ask a question, but they're just not used to knowing what those boundaries look like. They're also not used to having their kids ask. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create young men and young leaders. And I know Matt's probably going to add this, and this will be it for me on this end. But when they go to their first job or what have you, mom and dad can't come in there and save them or ask their boss, well, why did little Johnny get this promotion? Well, it's because, one, you didn't work harder. They pick somebody else. It is what it is. We don't say the 4-letter word in our household, fair. Like, fair is not a real word. Like, life's not, it is what it is. But yeah, that's my answer. And I'm sure Matt's probably got something similar to add to that as well.
Go ahead, Matt.
I'm going to play the fifth. And no, I'm just kidding. Parents, they're a piece of it. I tell our parents all the time that it takes a village to win a championship, and they're part of that village. I just hate to see the parents when they make it about themselves, whether it be their kids playing time, reliving their career, jumping all over umpires. Here's the one thing, the one common denominator I've seen from the really, really good kids, the good players. Their parents, they don't make excuses for them. My parents, they weren't perfect, but they raised me to, they said, look, we're never going to go above and beyond for you to play. If you want to play, you'll get out there and figure it out. So I tell our parents, like, let me do the coaching. Let me be the bad guy, instead of on that car ride home chewing them out or criticizing them. Just tell them you love them and talk to them and listen to them. So I always tell our parents, I want it to be a great experience for the 4 years you have with us, because you're going through it too. And so I do draw a line in the sand with the parents. There are things we can talk about, and there are things that we can't talk about. Parents know that don't come sit in the dugout during practice. I've had that happen. Because here's the deal, like if you work in a cubicle or a big office or drive a truck for a living, how would you feel if I came and popped into your office? So the baseball field is our office. It's already kind of weird that you can be on the outside of our office. It's like we're working in a glass office and you can see everything, and that's fine. I want you to see it, but just respect the boundaries and let me do my job. And because it's hard enough to do it, but if I'm having to deal with parents as well, that makes it even more challenging. So just trust me. But like I said, trust takes time. Trust is earned. And that's what we're in the early stages of doing at Boyd-Buchanan right now, is earning people's trust.
Sort of referenced this earlier when, Gene, you talked about Dakota. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the Savannah Bananas and sort of the novelty entertainment aspect of baseball, which is very traditionalist sport, probably not as much as golf, but maybe the next most traditional sport. So what do you think about the Savannah Bananas?
Yeah, I didn't know what to think about it when I first saw it. I've had a couple former players. Obviously, Dakota plays for them now in the Firefighters, so another team that plays them. Brandon Crosby, who was on our 17 team, he played 1 year for them. He's now in that Cosmo League down in Virginia. Gilly, the manager of the Bananas, is one of my coaching friends. And then obviously I knew Jesse Cole when he was in Gastonia and what he did with the Grizzlies there, and turning that whole franchise around. I think this brings a new fan to baseball. I think this brings – I've never been. I've seen it on TV. Like a couple of my buddies have asked me to go. I'm always coaching a travel team or coach a baseball or doing something. But I think there is some good to it. There's going to be some changes in baseball in the next few years. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this. They still play some type of baseball. I know once you get past like the dancing and all that, like they still are playing. Yes, it's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters, but at the same time, like you're still playing baseball. You still have to throw the ball. You still got to hit. Like, they're still playing defense for some point. Some of those kids, they were, like what's his name? Tanner, who's played for Mississippi State, second-round draft pick. He's now in it. So, they're starting to get some players. I think it's cool when they go back to ballparks and they bring back old ball players. He can't pass up on the marketing aspect. Jesse Cole is an absolute genius, him and his wife. And it's not just the baseball. They brought foster families to the light where, they do a great job around the country with foster families. And one of my former coaches I worked with, Andrew Bartman, who's with the Tailgaters, he coaches first base and grills while he's at first base. It's pretty funny. I saw that on TV. But, they've had a lot of kids in foster families, and now they have an even bigger platform to talk about it. So it's not just the show, if that makes sense. And I think once people listen to the story, Jesse and his wife used their last bit of savings to start this thing up. And now they own the rights to the ballpark down in Savannah. So it's a unique story. If you got a dream, follow it. They had a dream, they stuck to it. And, they were told no a bunch of times by traditionalists, and they're still packing out stadiums. They're doing something right. So
Yeah, packing out major league stadiums. That's the
NFL and they got a cruise coming up in the end of January, early February. We were going to try to get one of them to come and speak, and my buddy was like, "Yeah, we have spring training in January. Then we're going on a cruise." I was like, and then we start our tour. I was like, "Whoa!" So they got it going on, man. That's good for them. So,
what about you, Matt? Do you have any opinion about the Savannah Bananas?
I think it's great. I think, Jesse and his family betting on themselves. I think that's, what makes America great is anybody can go out there and do it. I think Gene's right. It's bringing a new fan to baseball. I know personally for me, I'd still rather go to an MLB ballpark. I'd still rather go to a minor league or college game. I've not been to a game in person for the Savannah Bananas. I guess if I was around it, maybe. It's just not been – I go to a lot of sporting events. I don't care if I'm in the last row of that stadium. I love to feel the energy of a live sporting event versus the television. But I guess what I've heard about the Savannah Bananas is they engage you from the time you get out of the car, which I think is cool. Like I said, it is some form of baseball. I don't know if it's rehearsed or not, if there's a predetermined winner. I really don't know any of those answers. I'm probably not doing a great job of selling myself as a marketing person for them, but I've got no hate towards it. I just, it's probably not my favorite thing. But I will say, with that being said, I am very open-minded. I think there's been so much good for baseball. The extra inning rule, getting rid of the pitcher. I might not like as much as the Savannah Banana stuff, but I also don't like the people that are like, oh, it's got to be like this from the 1920s. Because to me, baseball, once again, is like life. Do we really want to go back to how it was in the 60s in America? Do we really want to go back to how it was in the late 1800s or maybe even 10 years ago? So I think it's important in baseball and in life to be open-minded and to know that just because it's been one way doesn't mean it's not better another way. So that would be my answer for that is just be open-minded, try everything out. I tell our kids all the time, don't be predetermined. Don't tell yourself you're going to hate that spinach before you put it in your mouth because you're going to hate it. Be open-minded. You actually might like it. So that would be my answer for that.
Okay. And final question today for the two of you. So if your former players were sitting here today, what do you think they'd say about the impact you've had on them as players and as people?
So if a former player was sitting here today, I try to make sure I do a good job of still reaching out. I talked to 2 on the phone today, but I hope they would just say that something that I've done during their time, whether it was 1 year, 4 years, hopefully they kind of like I've done with my previous coaches, they've taken it and they've ran with it, and they've either done the same thing or they've done it better. Kind of like records are made to be broken. If you can take something that I've taught you and go do it better, then please do. But hopefully they're just a good work ethic. Once again, be a good human being, be open-minded, and just love everybody. I just think it's I don't think this life is as long as people think that it is. We can be here today and gone tomorrow. You can have a job today and it can be gone tomorrow. So just take every day like it's a blessing. Don't take it for granted, and give it everything you got. And I hope that our players, my players, whoever we've been a part of, could speak on that.
Gene?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go down the road that it depends on when. It depends if that's the St. Mary's Annapolis kid or when I coached college or now. I mean, hopefully all the kids can respond that, I gave, 3 T's, my time, my talent, or my treasure to them as much as I could. I mean, there's been kids who, at different schools who have struggled in different aspects of life. I try to be there as much as I can. It's very hard to be there for everybody after they leave a program. It's the kids who, like Matt said, there's a couple kids that always hit us that we'll stay in touch with. I think the collective, if you go back to that high school kid, would be like, he was probably trying to be somebody he wasn't. And I mean, I'm good with that. I think growth is good. Almost 40 now and almost a man. So,
yeah, but you, unlike Coach Gundy, you have a job now. So
Hey, yeah, good job now, right? So I just think that it comes down to that, and hopefully I made some type of difference, even if it was good or bad. Maybe it was what you should do or what you should do, but now I remember packing these kids up and, we jumping on a charter bus and going to Birmingham or taking these kids to Knoxville, Tennessee, and try to get them outside of Maryland. Having the vision to just so they could see more than just baseball and more than just, just playing games. I think obviously you got the experience going to Rick Wood with us, and it's just more than an event for me or just time with those kids. I think it's the experience they all had too, and hopefully the life lessons were. They saw the closeness we had, and obviously these guys reached out to me now. I do what I can. Matt sees it. We've had players reach out in our short time together, and I'll bend over backwards. I'll leave you with this story, and Matt doesn't even know this story. I was so hard pressed to get a game in against a local team in Maryland that I took all my clothes out of the shed because I was in between homes and it had just poured down rain, and we used all my clothes to dry the field just so we can get our first ever win in, 90 some games in a row they had lost. So I don't think we probably should have never played that game, but it's just stories like that where I don't think there's many coaches like Coach Matt or myself out there. They're just not. We are definitely a special breed.
I don't know Matt's side, but I know your side. And you talked about rain, and it made me think about the time when your fall team, the Arsenal team, which is how we met you. Damon was on that team, and we were supposed to play a game at the University of Maryland, and it got rained out. And while we were waiting for the game to be called, we were hanging out in the student union, and the players were just playing video games and playing pool. And that was the night Damon decided he wanted to come to Annapolis to play for you. So you just
that was at the Stamp Student Union. They had the bowling alley, pool, and all that. Yeah, it took us up there. I just got done school, so I knew how to get in there. So that's I forgot all about that. Yeah, you definitely brought back a memory. So that's funny.
Guys, thank you so much for being here today, and happy holidays. I hope you guys have good Thanksgiving, good Christmas, and whatever holiday you celebrate.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this for the first time, make sure you check out Melvin E. Edwards with his multiple books online, and you can find my name in one of those books.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate you having us on. Happy holidays to everyone. Really cool to be able to tell our story across the country. Hopefully it inspires someone. And, if you're ever in Chattanooga in the springtime, make sure to look us up. And, I'd be remiss to say that it is so much fun to get to do this with Gene, to get to go to work every day with someone that pushes me to be the best version of myself. I love him to death. And yeah, like I said, I think we're just getting started in this thing, and keep up with us. But go Bucks, and happy holidays, everyone.
The dynamic duo.
That's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Please share this episode with someone who you think might be interested, and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. I'll see you again next time, and until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stories from Real Life. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Let's meet right here every Tuesday and Friday. See you then.